All right, so this Knife Thoughts video is going to be a review of this knife, and this is the Civivi Elementum. And first of all, this knife was sent to me by Civivi, and I'll tell you more about that a little later, but the Elementum is one of Civivi's most popular models. And I think that that's probably in large part because it's a really great size for EDC for most people or everyday carry. And the reason is because it has just under a 3-inch blade. So first of all, it's legal in most places, and not all places, but most places where you can have a one-hand opening and locking knife, while still giving you enough edge, usable edge, that it will pretty much be able to handle most normal cutting tasks, whether it be, cutting cardboard, opening boxes, or even some light food prep. 3 inches usually will be enough. And then the handle is just around 4 inches. So it's not so big that it's going to take up a whole lot of pocket space. It'll fit pretty well into most pockets without being too obtrusive, especially with this deep pocket carry clip. And the first thing I noticed about this particular knife are these really cool wood handles. And this is what Civivi calls, I have trouble pronouncing it, but Cuibourtia or Cuibourtia wood, which is actually a genus of trees with several different species within it, including Rhodesian teak, African rosewood, and babinga, which are specific types of wood that I've seen on other knives, mostly traditional knives. And that's kind of the case, is that you don't really see wood covers or wood handles on modern knives that often. So it's really cool. And when I opened this knife, I was really surprised to see it. I knew that Civivi did knives in wood handles, but I wasn't expecting to get this knife, period, let alone to get one with wood handles. And especially because I actually have been wanting to get a modern knife with wood handles. So it's really cool looking. And it has some really nice grain here, as you can see. My one has this knot that gives it some nice character, and then a really similar and nice looking grain on the back, and kind of a dark caramely color to it, some variation with darker streaks and then lighter streaks. So it looks really good, and I was really happy with how it looked when I first took it out of the box. And then the next thing I noticed here is that it has Knife Thoughts engraved on it. And funnily enough, I have had some other things, other kind of articles with Knife Thoughts engraved on it, some dog tags and stuff like that from other companies. But I've never actually had a knife that had Knife Thoughts engraved on it. So I was really excited to see that. And what this is it was sent to me by Civivi, and it was a complete surprise. I didn't know that it was coming. It actually came with a couple other things. So it came in a really nice presentation box, and it came with one of these multi-tools with some, hex driver type things, a bottle opener, and then a pretty effective looking pry bar, and then this cool brass multi-tool. And this multi-tool is something where I don't know how much I will use it, so I may do a giveaway or something like that, but this is designed to open doors as well as open bottles, and then it did come with some kind of things that you fit on here so that you can use it as a stylus on touchscreens. So pretty cool, and something that I, again, was not expecting to get to check out. And you could definitely use it, but again, I haven't really used it too much. And then it also came with a note. So I'm going to show you this note here. First of all, nice kind of faux wax seal, and then a nice little note here. And one of the big things is that it does, announce here that there's going to be a sale for Father's Day. So I wanted to put this in this video. It is a review video, but they did send this knife along, and I have actually gotten Civivi knives on their sales before, and I think that it's a good opportunity. So they are doing a Father's Day sale from the 7th to the 20th at participating dealers, and also at Civivi.com and the Amazon store. So, it gives you a really good opportunity to get these knives for a discount or at a discount. And also, if you buy them from a participating dealer, but not from Amazon or Civivi.com, you'll get a lanyard. And I'm pretty sure, so they sent this lanyard along in the same package, and I'm pretty sure this is the lanyard that you'll get, but I'm not 100% sure, so don't quote me on that. It might be a different lanyard, but it'll come with some type of lanyard. Now, I'm not a huge lanyard person. I actually do have a lanyard on another Civivi or We-Made knife that I'll show you in a bit here, but I don't typically use lanyards, but it's a cool little addition. So definitely, if you like this knife or other Civivi knives, check out that sale. And I do want to mention also, I have an affiliate link. I'll put it in the description, that if you purchase a Civivi knife through that link directly from Civivi, it basically shows them that you heard about it or decided to purchase it because of Knife Thoughts, and it helps the channel. So I do appreciate that, but I want to move on to the review of the knife. So I am typically or historically not really a huge small knife person. I like bigger knives. I like knives like the Spyderco Police or the ZTO 561, which are a good bit larger than this knife, with 3.5 to even up to 4.25 inch blades. I think are pretty reasonable for me to carry and use. So when I got this knife, it definitely was a little smaller than I generally prefer, or at least I thought. Then I decided to put it in my pocket and, you know, give it a shot. And like, again, another knife from Civivi, or actually from I was really surprised at how much I did like it. One thing that's really important to me on a knife is that it has good ergonomics, and what usually or often makes good ergonomics is a simple handle shape. And the reason for that is because if you get too specific and complicated with a handle shape, it just lowers the pool of people whose hands are going to fit that shape well. When it's nice and simple, it's going to fit a lot of people's hands well. And that's very much the case here on the Elementum. You can see that it is a very simple kind of oblong shape, and it does fit well in my hand. So you can see my index finger sits just below the flipper. My thumb goes right onto that really reasonable jimping. Sometimes companies go overboard with their jimping, in my opinion, but not so at all here. My thumb fits right onto that jimping, and then the rest of my fingers, and I pretty much get a full 4-finger grip, actually. My pinky maybe is starting to go off the end, but because it's rounded, it's not a problem at all. It doesn't cause a hot spot whatsoever. And I did use this knife a good bit and found that to be the case throughout use, is that it feels good in the hand. And another thing is that often, or more often, when you're using a knife, you use it in a pinch type grip like this, and that rounded other side of the butt of the knife really fits into the palm of your hand well and makes it comfortable in use. So the handle really works well for me. Even being a smaller knife, I think that it feels good in the hand. The pocket clip doesn't really create any hot spots. You can kind of feel it there, but not so much that it's, you know, digging into your hand or anything like that. Another thing with the handle that I find interesting is something that Civivi does, where they make the actual cover or the scale a little bit smaller than the liner. And you can see that, how that liner sticks out there. And it's an interesting thing. They definitely do it on other knives also, like this, which is the Dogma, which they also sent to me. And I kind of thought about it a lot, and I do think that it may be something that they do to allow for a little bit more tolerance in their manufacturing. And what I mean by that is, if you make this handle scale and it's not exactly perfect to fit the liners, but you have it so that the liners don't stick out at all, it's going to be really easy to see that it's not a perfect fit. But if you make this scale just a little bit smaller, it's going to be a little bit harder to see if it's not as much of a perfect fit. And now the interesting thing with that is, even though it might be, and I'm not sure on that, I haven't asked them, but it might be kind of a way to ease the manufacturing tolerances that they need, it doesn't, I think, take anything away from either the practicality of the knife or the looks. I actually really like being able to see that black outline along the handle, because it kind of frames the scales. Now, would that be the case on other knives? I don't know with different handles, but I do really like to have this wood framed. Now, I think that it looks fine on this knife also, which doesn't have wood scales. So you can be the judge of whether you think that it's aesthetically acceptable or not, but I do personally. So just an interesting thing with the handle. And one more thing with this handle, I got this knife, I carried it for a little bit and realized that these screws were coming loose. They were not falling out, but they were not tightened all the way down, and it allowed the scale to move back and forth slightly. So I was a little bit surprised by that. I didn't at first know why the scale was moving back and forth, but I realized that the screws were loose. I put some, thread locker, removable thread locker on there, tightened them down. Haven't had that issue since. So seems like something where maybe you should check to see that those handle scale screws are screwed in all the way when you get it. And, if they're not, tighten them down, but it might just be something that was on this particular, example. Now, moving on to the blade, again, I typically do like a little bit larger blade, something in the 3.5 to about 4-inch range. But I've used this knife a good bit. It is a little small for food prep, and probably most people aren't using their EDC knife for a whole lot of food prep. But recently I was on vacation and didn't have any of my normal kitchen or cooking knives with me, so I did use the knives that I was carrying to do some of my food prep. And it works well, cutting carrots, stuff like that. But once you get into something a little bit bigger, like specifically I was trying to cut up a bunch of spinach, it's a little bit small for that for sure. But for more normal EDC tasks, again, like cutting cardboard, breaking down cardboard, or opening boxes, cutting strings off clothes, and just general stuff like that, opening packages, it works really well. And honestly, you probably don't need more than those 3 inches. The other thing is that this knife doesn't really have a choil, so you do get a pretty close to the full blade length with edge, but you actually can choke up onto this flipper a little bit if you would like to, and I found myself doing that sometimes. So it's nice that you still get almost a full 3 inches of edge, but can actually choke up on it pretty well. So as for the size, it's kind of like Civivi and we are maybe convincing me that I don't really need knives in quite as large a size range as I thought I did. Moving on to the construction, now I did mention how this scale moved slightly, but it was easy to adjust, just adjusted it with a torque screw and everything. Speaking of the liners here, these are very, very milled out, which is great. I mean, it makes it much lighter. You can see all that milling in there on both sides of the knife. I think you might be able to see it a little easier. Yeah, the milling on both sides. It does make it lighter while, still maintaining the normal lock bar. And speaking of the lock bar, it has always locked up really well, about 30 to 40% lockup, and no issues whatsoever with blade play. I haven't had to adjust the pivot at all. It came perfect with no blade play side to side, even when unlocked like this, and no forward and back when locked at all. So nicely made on the lock and pivot. And speaking of the pivot, it flips really well. That's something that I've come to expect from Civivi and We Made knives. They just really know how to dial in a detent. It holds into the handle really, really solidly. And so because it has that nice crisp detent, it really breaks out. And I've never not flipped this knife the whole way open when I was opening it. So definitely a well-tuned detent, and the ball bearing pivot certainly helps. So really nice action. Now, one thing to be aware of that I found is that if you unlock the blade a little farther down here, I'm going to try to do this without cutting myself, it will fall all the way and hit your thumb. But hopefully it'll hit your thumbnail and not the skin. If you do unlock it farther up here, then that flipper tab hits the thumbnail instead of the edge. So just something to be aware of when you're unlocking this knife. Try not to unlock it down toward the end of the jimping here, where it will close onto your thumb, but rather up in this kind of scalloped area here where the flipper will hit your thumb. As for the cutting of the knife, it has done really well. I think that Civivi does a good job of their grinds. You can see it comes to a relatively thin edge, It seems evenly ground to me. The swedging is really nice looking, and the coating on this blade has held up pretty well also. I have cut some plastic packaging and stuff like that, and I haven't either had to fully sharpen the knife. I have stropped it, to bring it back up to full sharpness, but I haven't had to actually reset the bevel. So the D2 steel that Civivi uses seems to hold up really well, and it seems to be heat treated as they say it is, which is relatively hard. So honestly, the knife not only, I think, looks really good, it works really well also. I've really enjoyed carrying and using it, and I want to give you some comparisons here. So this is the Civivi Elementum next to the Wii Banter. And this was kind of one of those knives that, like I said, started to convince me that maybe I didn't need such a big blade on a knife. This knife is a similar size to the Elementum. Some different features. It has G10 instead of the wood, and a little bit different blade setup with the thumb stud versus the flipper, but similar in size. And I would say similar in build quality also. I think that Civivi offers a really good value as compared to Wii, although, this knife being a little bit less expensive than most Wii knives, I think is a good value also, even though it was sent to me by the designer, Ben Peterson. I think that these Civivi knives are made to a high quality standard. So that's the Banter. To give you another Civivi, this is the Wyvern, so definitely bigger. And this is the Dogma, also bigger. And then I also wanted to show this knife along with some wooden handled knives, just to kind of show the aesthetic here. Like I said, wooden handled modern knives are really not that common. It's more common to see wooden handled traditional knives. And here are two Great Eastern Cutlery knives. This is a number 18 Beagle in oil sucker rod wood and a number 44 Buffalo Jack in Cocobolo, or Cocobolo, however you say that wood. So it allows me to finally, after a long time, be able to have a true Wooden Wednesday trio where I can carry a modern knife with wooden handles, a traditional knife with wooden handles, and then a fixed blade with wooden handles. So that was part of why I was hoping to get a modern knife in wooden handles, and why I appreciated that Civivi does offer them. They do offer some other ones. They offer some other models in this wood, as well as some models in ebony wood. So I think if you're looking for a modern knife with wood handles, these Civivis are a good option, especially considering this knife is only $75. And I know that that's not super inexpensive. I know that that's a lot to a lot of people, but I think considering what you're getting, the quality of the construction, the materials, the unique handle material, I think it's a pretty good value. I know that I don't think I can think of any better value of a modern knife with a wood handle. And that's, one of those things where if that's something you're interested in, this is probably a really good option. So I hope you've enjoyed this video as much as I've enjoyed getting this knife. It was a huge surprise. Like I said, I didn't know that it was coming, and I do really appreciate Civivi sending it along. And like I mentioned, if you do, have an interest in any of these Civivi knives, if you plan to get one, it definitely helps the channel if you purchase it through the affiliate link that I'll have in the description. So I do really appreciate it when people do that. But I also just wanted to let people know about this upcoming sale that Civivi is doing, because I think you'll be able to get a really good value of a knife, even if you don't use my affiliate link. So if you've enjoyed the video, go ahead and click the thumbs up to like the video, and also consider subscribing to the channel. I do have lots of other videos on knives like this and knife related videos. I also have my social media, Instagram and Facebook, mostly at Knife Thoughts, and my website, knifethoughts.com, where I post articles, again, on knives like this and knife-related topics. And last but not least, as always, don't forget to go out and do good.